این داستان موفق‌ترین شرکت فست فود دنیاست. روزانه در بیش از 36,000 رستوران و در 120 کشور به 69 میلیون نفر خوراکی می‌دهد.
McDonald's is the biggest brand in the world.
در ایالات متحده آمریکا متولد شد، کشوری که عاشق فست فوده.
They put the hamburger on the assembly line.
چطور یک همبرگر فروشی محلی تمام آمریکا را تسخیر کرد؟
He had this little plane. Aha, that's where the McDonald's should go.
چطور رستوران‌های بریتانیا را تغییر داد؟
Space age flavors, a whole bunch of sugar and fat that made us feel really happy.
و بعد رفت تا دنیا را تسخیر کند. به دیدار طرفدارانش می رویم.
There's over 1,000 cups and glasses.
They are salty. Man, these are just good. 5 out of 5. Boom, 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 boom,
Wow. Could you just move back a little bit?
از بزرگترین بحث و جدل‌ها پرده برمی‌داریم.
It was known as McLibel. It was a PR disaster.
و به خطراتی که از سوی رقبایش ایجاد می‌شد
They
می‌پردازیم.
knew radically they had to change the brand or they would die.
چطور مکدونالد به اوج رسید و همانجا باقی ماند؟
You know, it's the arc of the 20th century.
سال 2018 جشن 50 سالگی بیگ مکه. در هر قاره‌ای سری می‌شود این برند رو پیدا کرد. چنان جزئی از زندگی مردم شده که اقتصاددانان برای اندازه‌گیری ارزش ارز در دنیا از آن استفاده می‌کنند.
Hello, this is another Whitfield food review.
این افراد که ولاگرهای بین‌المللی غذا هستند، هزاران طرفدار دارند
Right. Pop that lid.
و هیچ غذایی را بیشتر از این دوست نداشتند.
The iconic McDonald's Big Mac.
آیا شما هم طرفدار یک بیگ مک پروپیمون هستید؟ پس باید از جیم دلیگاتی، نماینده مکدونالد از پیتسبورگ تشکر کنید.
Ooh, I like when it's covered in grease on the outside of the box. Yeah, you know what you're getting yourself into.
دستور پخت جیم اینه: 2 تا برگر گوشت،
Sweet, we got some good pickles. Looks like some lettuce. That mac sauce.
سس بیگ مک و نون کنجدی رو اضافه کنید.
That's pretty big.
بعد پنیر، کاهو، پیاز و خیارشور رو بگذارید روش.
The mac sauce is what does it for me, I think.
این ساندویچ سال 1968 به منو اضافه شد.
Like literally buns were just like slip sliding off.
و از همون اول پرطرفدار بود.
Big Mac, overall thumbs up? Thumbs up. Thumbs up.
فقط در ایالات متحده سالانه بیش از 0.5 میلیارد بیگ مک فروخته میشه. حدود 17 تا در ثانیه. خب چطور این همبرگر نومادین در زندگی همه ماها تبدیل به یک برند برتر شد؟ برگردیم به سال 1939، زمانی که آمریکا دارد از رکود اقتصادی بزرگ بیرون میاد. تجارت داره رونق میگیره، به خصوص در حوزه صنعت خودرو.
America was falling in love with the car, and all over the emerging roadways of the United States, people were building restaurants to service new travelers. People had never had cars before. They'd never had to stop for food on casual road trips.
این راننده‌های گرسنه برای 2 برادر اهل نیو همشایر به معنی یک فرصت تجاریه.
The McDonald's brothers had come to Southern California. They didn't make it in the movie business, so they started a hot dog stand. And then from there, they evolved into a hamburger restaurant.
ریچارد و موریس مکدونالد کجا میتونن برگر بفروشن تا راننده‌ها رو جذب کنن؟ معلومه، جاده 66 در سان برناردینو، کالیفرنیا.
People were so in love with their cars, they didn't want to get out of their cars.
Drivers had car hops. They were very attractive women in interesting clothing, and they would come out to a car, they would take an order, and then when the food was ready, they would bring the food out. They would set it on a tray and put it on your car. You would eat this, and this was the drive-in business.
اولین رستوران مکدونالد در سال 1940 باز شد. تقاضا زیاده ولی سرویس کنده. گزینه‌های توی منیو خیلی زیادن. ایستادن توی صف کلی معطلی داره. برادرها متوجه میشن که باید کارها رو جور دیگه‌ای انجام بدن.
McDonald's started as a kind of chaos of offerings. They were doing everything from, barbecued food, some burgers. I mean, the McDonald brothers were really kind of turning out every sort of food they could get their hands on.
The brothers, what they decided to differentiate themselves from all these other competitors, they realized what they could do is pare down their menu and be more efficient. So they shut down the restaurant one day and decided on their tennis court how to lay out the most efficient system of food preparation so that you could get your hamburger in under 20 seconds. They said that they put the hamburger on the assembly line. They thought the way Henry Ford thought about putting the automobile together, which was just a sort of precision step-by-step factory.
ایدهشون جواب میده. در سال 1948 برادران رستورانشون را با ظاهری جدید بازگشایی میکنن. با یک خط تولید که پشت سر هم برگر درست میکنه. اونم نه توی چند دقیقه بلکه توی چند ثانیه.
You would order it yourself at a window, you'd pick it up and you would take it back to your car. You could still eat it in your car or you could drive away. No car hops were needed. It saved problems of no loss on cutlery or plates, and that saved problems on people driving away without paying.
I'm Michael Fontaine. I want to welcome you to my world of McDonald's. There's over 1,000 cups and glasses, floor to ceiling. You're going to see 25,000 plus lapel pins. Surprise! This is my Happy Meal room. Also, I've got a lot of Ronald McDonald items, 75,000 pieces. These are original menu tickets. You can see how few of items that we had on our menu. Big Mac is not even on this ticket. This is before 1968.
McDonald's wasn't about choice, it was about speed. So they made it easy on themselves by only having a few items that they did well and they did quickly.
Early McDonald's only had hamburgers, French fries. They sold soda, shakes, and other beverages and a few other products. So that was all that was there.
What they invented was this quick serve, this speedy service of food delivery and preparation.
برادران میخوان تمام دنیا از سرویس دهی فوق سریعشون با خبر بشن. پس یک شخصیت کارتونی درست میکنن که این پیام رو برسونه.
This is Speedy, and Speedy appeared in McDonald's from 1948 to 1961, and it stood for the Speedy Service System, setting McDonald's apart from all other restaurants. Speed was a priority.
Back then, that was like a rocket ship. It was a Tesla of its day.
برادران مکدونالد راههای دیگه‌ای هم برای جلب توجه پیدا می‌کنن. ساختمان منحصر به فردی طراحی می‌کنن تا راننده‌هایی که از اونجا رد میشن رو جذب کنه. این آلبرت آکوراست. وی در محل اولین رستوران اونها یک موزه مکدونالد رو انداخته.
Behind me is the original McDonald's sign, and below it you see a monument. They put a plaque in there that says this on this date, 1948, Dick and Mac McDonald's opened the very first McDonald's. So this property is the original offices of Dick McDonald. This was his personal office. These are original red and white tiles.
منوی جدید شاید مختصر و ساده باشه، ولی از یکی از آیتم‌هاش نمیشه گذشت.
McDonald's became famous for the French fries, and they processed all the French fries, peel all the potatoes for the next day. The Santa Ana winds, the dry winds, they air dry the potatoes. So we're sort of a semi-desert out here.
There was nothing like McDonald's in Southern California.
سرعت، خدمات و خوشمزگی خیلی زود مکدونالد رو از بقیه سرتر کرد.
There was simply nothing like it. What was exciting about it is you could see inside. You could see the entire operation because they had a glass window on the front of it. I mean, it was an incredible experience. It was clean. It was new. And they had the sign out in front that said, over 1 million hamburgers sold.
وقتی که دهه 40 میلادی به آخرش میرسه، اقتصاد آمریکا از همیشه بهتره. ولی همه به اندازه برادرای مکدونالد موفق نیستن. 3200 کیلومتر دورتر از کالیفرنیا، ری کراک که یک دستفروش دوره‌گرده به مشکل برخورده.
Because his milkshake machine business back in Chicago was starting to waver. Ray was looking for the next big thing.
اما چطور یک دستفروش خیابونی و یک رستوران سطح پایین با یک برگر دنیا رو عوض میکنن؟
As exciting as the McDonald brothers were, and as the system that they had was a tremendous system, but we would never have heard of McDonald's without Ray Kroc.
برگردیم به آمریکای سال 1940. دستفروش پرتلاش ری کراک میره که تاریخ رو تغییر بده و طرز غذا خوردن همه ما رو عوض کنه. از یک رستوران در کالیفرنیای آفتابی یک تماس دریافت میکنه.
Ray was a paper cup salesman, and back when he was a paper cup salesman, that was high tech. He'd sell them to ballparks, to soda fountains, and that was revolutionary. While he was selling the paper cups, he stumbled upon these guys who were selling ice cream, and they were Prince Castle. And the Prince Castle people had come up with this multi-mixer, a way of making milkshakes in a speedy way. Ray got instantly why this was a revolution and wrangled his way into selling these machines all across the country. He was the distributor.
It's a multi-mixer. It's made by Prince Castle. And Ray Kroc, he got an order in 1954 for 8 of these. And he could not believe one restaurant needed 8 multi-mixers. And he got in his car from Chicago, and he drove all the way out to San Bernardino, California, to see the operation. He was floored. He just could not believe the lines standing out front to get a McDonald's milkshake.
And he stood in the parking lot and he watched these lines of people walking up to the counter, getting fed quickly, and rapturously devouring their hamburgers and French fries. And he wanted to meet the brothers.
ری که فهمیده مکدونالد ظرفیت این رو داره که در کل کشور گسترش پیدا کنه، به برادرها پیشنهاد میده که ازشون نمایندگی بگیره. اما دیر کرده، چون برادرها قبل‌تر این کارو کرده بودن.
By coincidence, because everything in life is all about timing, the franchise agent had a heart attack. And so the brothers didn't have anybody managing the sales of these blueprints anymore. And Ray was so persistent that when this opening happened, they hired him.
حالا ری در 50 سالگیش بی‌تابه تا کار بزرگش رو انجام بده.
One of their early employees was a former World War II fighter pilot who gave flying lessons on the weekend. Don Conley is his name. He had this little plane, and Ray saw this plane, and he said, "This plane is our tool." And he would fly over the emerging suburbs of the Midwest in particular and see, there's the church, and there's the high school, and there's the housing development that's being built. Aha, that's where the McDonald's should go. And that's how they figured out strategically where to place new McDonald's. They had a long list of people who were desperate to get their hands on a McDonald's franchise, and they would assign you, they'd say, okay, well, we have a franchise opportunity available in Allentown, Pennsylvania, or somewhere in Indiana, and you'd have to move there to start it.
در طول 6 سال بعدی بیش از 200 شعبه جدید در سراسر آمریکا باز میشه و تا سال 1958 مکدونالد 100 میلیون برگر میفروشه. ولی برگر بدون سیب زمینی سرخ کرده هیچی نیست و هیچ کس به خوبی مکدونالد هنر تولید انبوه رو نداره.
Here to review McDonald's standard classic French fries.
Are you ready for McDonald's French fries? I think I'm ready. Ooh, I got a balancer. This is the small size of McDonald's French fries. McDonald's fries, salty joy. I never don't eat a handful of them at once.
اولین سیب زمینی سرخ کردهشون رو از سیب زمینی تازه درست کردن.
They are salty.
Man, these are just good. This is so thin and salty and delicious.
I do not know what magic dust they sprinkle on these other than salt.
اما بعد یک متخصص تغذیه به نام کن استرانگ پروسه سیب زمینی سرخ کرده یخزده رو کلید میزنه.
These really are the most iconic menu item in the world. I agree.
حالا هر جای دنیا که باشید سیب زمینی سرخ کرده مکدونالد شما یک شکله.
I'm gonna put down my fries and give 2 thumbs up.
Yeah, 5.
5 out of 5.
Put those bad boys up, because I'm gonna milk them with 2 more. Boom, 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 boom,
Wow.
boom.
با تمام شدن دهه 50 میلادی ری کراک و مکدونالد با هم اختلاف پیدا کردند. ری میخواد با شتاب بیشتری کار رو توسعه بده ولی اونها از همون روند فعلی راضی‌اند. در سال 1961 کار به جاهای باریک میکشه.
Ray and Harry, his chief money man, knew that they needed to buy out the brothers. They were giving the brothers such a huge royalty, and the brothers still had such tremendous say over the growth of the business that they needed to cut them out. So Ray and Harry went to the brothers and said, "What will it take for you to go away?" And the brothers said, "We want $2.7 million cash."
Which doesn't sound like a lot today, but was a fortune in 1961. And they had a really good retirement.
They cashed out of a business that had done them just fine and rode off into the sunset.
ولی ری هیچ جا نمیره. حالا به عنوان یک رئیس بیچون و چرا برندش رو به طور بی سابقه عرضه میکنه.
One of the reasons for the success of McDonald's was they had this unique golden arches that came out of the building and came outside. And the reason why fast food operations in general had unique architecture was simply people would be driving by. They would drive by on a freeway or drive by on a highway, and you would know exactly what you're going to get.
In America at that time, when everything was about fast and the original frictionless consumerism, that if you were driving past multiple outlets offering up the same fare of, you know, a good honest burger, what actually subliminally clicked into your mind? There was a hidden persuasion about the McDonald's branding that became something so identifiable it threw out the competition.
Ray Kroc is the reason why that model, a small community in Southern California, expanded throughout the United States and then began to expand globally. He hoped that there would be 1,000 McDonald's by the time that he died.
در واقع ری خیلی سریع به آرزوش رسید. طی 7 سال 1000 رستورانی رو که می‌خواست افتتاح کرد.
Where this 15 cents is, when Ray Kroc decided to change the price of hamburgers, he put a new sign in, and the sign said coast to coast. Because by that time, McDonald's was all the way across the United States, from the Atlantic to the Pacific. You're talking middle 60s. This is a one of a kind. I don't know another one of them in the world. When they tore down the McDonald's, the first one that I worked at, I took this sign with me. And it was actually, I stored it underneath my bed in a half a dozen houses that I lived in until I could finally give it this resting place. When I had the house built, I had it made for this sign.
تا سال 1962 طاق‌های طلایی بخش از لوگوی مکدونالد رو تشکیل میدن. یک سال بعد یک کاراکتر جدید آوازه مکدونالد رو پخش میکنه. آیا کمی غیرعادی بود؟ شاید. مؤثر بود؟ قطعاً.
Ronald McDonald all of a sudden became a very popular figure, particularly for kids.
Ironically, what people may not know is that Ronald McDonald was so successful at representing McDonald's, he ate so many McDonald's that he became too fat. He became obese. McDonald's sacked him for being overweight.
جایگزین‌های رونالد باز هم فروش رو بیشتر کردن. اونها به ری کراک کمک میکنن تا خیلی پولدار بشه. در اواسط دهه 70 میلادی ری کناره‌گیری میکنه، ولی قصه گسترش مکدونالد تازه داره شروع میشه. اونا آمریکا رو فتح کردن. حالا نوبت بریتانیاست.
This is a prized piece of my McDonald's collection. It's a 3000 McDonald's opening in London, England. It was in Woolwich on November 13th, 1974. And inside here is articles all around the world of McDonald's celebrating this 3,000 restaurant opening.
It's quite hard these days to imagine the bleak food scene that existed in the United Kingdom post-war. You have to conjure up a scene where post-rationing, people were very used to getting by with very, very little. And it really was a bleak, grey scene. There was very little choice. Eating out was seen as something that was pretty rare.
There wasn't a lot in the UK before McDonald's. I think you had your posh restaurants that were the kind of restaurants you saw in kind of Only Fools and Horses or, or in on sitcoms with white tablecloths. And then you had a few cafes, as far as I can tell.
And when the first branch opened, they got Ed Stewpot Stewart, DJ of the 70s, to cut the ribbon. It was a game changer, and it was this little bit of American stardust.
And suddenly to have this food that was almost like, I wouldn't say it was almost like non-food, but it was like this amazing space age flavours. And I guess a whole bunch of sugar and fat that made us feel really happy. It was like this little slice of Americana. It was landing right here on our high street, and it was very exciting. It was very exciting to experience.
There was something that we subliminally bought into. Rock and roll, the Fonz, American graffiti. It felt that we were biting a piece of that American TV and movie land that we were hypnotized by either the square or the big screen.
یک دهه بعد از افتتاح اولین شعبه در لندن بیش از 8000 رستوران مکدونالد وجود داره. کراک از دنیا میره در حالی که به چیزی خیلی بیشتر از آرزوش رسیده. طاق‌های طلایی حالا در 35 کشور دنیا وجود دارن. حتی جنگ سرد هم نتونست جلوی اون رو بگیره.
If you think about how McDonald's broke down political barriers, Cuba aside, their moment was as the thawing relations started to develop, who was the first footing into those places like Russia and China, McDonald's.
One of the largest McDonald's in the world was in Moscow for a long time.
Brand is obviously key to McDonald's, and that is ultimately the asset that they have. It's a bit like Coca-Cola. It's not the sugary brown liquid that makes Coca-Cola valuable, it's the brand associations and the memories that people have and associations with Coca-Cola or McDonald's. And once you are, I think, a household name like McDonald's, you have a huge advantage.
McDonald's became successful with better marketing, better PR, greater ambition, forthright determination, and clever licensing.
حالا چند چیز دیگه هم به منو اضافه شده. در سال 1979 از این آیتم‌ها رونمایی شد.
Every time you have a Mac Nugget, you're having a little bite of history.
McNudes. When you order them, they ask you if you want sauce. We got honey mustard and barbecue.
رنی آرنولد اولین سرآشپز مکدونالد مبتکر دستور پخت مکناگت مرغه.
They're crispy, they're crunchy.
مکناگت بلافاصله خیلی محبوب میشه و درخواست‌ها خیلی بیشتر از ظرفیته.
Which a lot of people grew up eating these. Are they deep fried? Are you trying to punch so hard through that honey mustard? I like to sauce it up.
بعدها شکایت‌هایی که درباره سالم نبودن ناگت‌ها میشه مکدونالد رو به سمت تغییر دادن دستور پخت میبره.
I think they're very tasty. I think they taste good, but I can tell the difference.
I love the crispiness. Okay. I love how salty they are.
مکناگت‌ها 4 شکل داره: زنگوله‌ای، پاپیونی، توپی و چکمه‌ای.
It's a boot. This one looks like the state of Louisiana. Thumbs up. Still a thumbs up. Let's do a thumbs up.
در بریتانیا در اواسط دهه 90 میلادی واقعا در هر خیابان اصلی یک رستوران مکدونالد وجود داشت.
I grew up in a posh part of North London called Hampstead, and for years McDonald's had been trying to open up a franchise in this leafy green suburb. But McDonald's agreed to make some concessions. In order to win round the local community, they held a competition amongst us local school children, with the winner getting to cut the ribbon on the opening day. And so our teacher set us the task. She asked us to write a sentence about why we like McDonald's. And I wrote, I like McDonald's because there's a wide variety of food, and my pal Ronald thinks so too. McDonald's PR machine was just overjoyed that they could offer me, a 7-year-old pescatarian, a fillet of fish burger for the banks of cameras and journalists who attended the opening ceremony. It was a great moment to be a part of. Back in the day, I'm sure I felt fantastic, but I look at it with a tinge of regret now.
حسرت، چون کسی که یک زمانی عکسش روی پوستر مکدونالد بود، حالا یکی از مهلک‌ترین دشمنانش شده و خیلی از این دشمنان هم پشتش ردیف شده بودن. اوضاع داشت برای بزرگترین رستوران زنجیره برگر فروشی دنیا سخت می‌شد. در دهه 90 میلادی خواست مکدونالد برای تسخیر دنیا ادامه داره، طوری که هر سال 1000 رستوران جدید در سراسر دنیا افتتاح میشه. همه چیز عالی پیش میره، ولی قرار خیلی چیزها عوض بشن.
The 1970s and the 1980s were a time of glorious growth for McDonald's. And I suppose it was mainly fueled by its very simple popularity. But once McDonald's crept into the 1990s, the brand started to come under attack from all sides.
McDonald's attracted a lot more criticism, and that became, to a certain extent, the end of what had been, particularly its early days, a bit of a fairy tale.
جنبش ضد سرمایه‌داری مکدونالد رو هدف درجه 1 قرار داده و اعتراضات به سراسر دنیا کشیده میشه. سازمان گرین پیس در لندن در سال 1990 وارد کار میشه و یک سلسله اتهاماتی رو درباره بیرحمی نسبت به حیوانات، غذاهای ناسالم و کارهای بی‌کیفیت مطرح میکنه.
This had almost no national media attention. That is until the McDonald's PR machine decided to attack it.
In terms of the leaflets given out in thousands when we were sued are now being given out in millions all over the world.
And it became one of the most famous cases in the 1990s. It was known as McLibel.
Could you just move back a little bit?
The two activists decided to defend themselves, and they were up against a war machine of lawyers.
The decision to take on David Morris and Helen Steele has been described as the biggest corporate PR disaster in history. Appropriate then that two people who would probably never go inside a McDonald's hold their press conference outside the fast food chain. They say the resistance will continue.
McDonald's used the weight and force of their corporate might to crush these people. And as soon as you step into a court for a brand, you begin to lose a battle, because it then draws out the argument of the opposing side and the tactics you've used to crush these people as an example of your power, your paranoia, and perhaps there's smoke. Actually, there is some fire.
McDonald's won the case, but they lost the PR battle. The big story was of this corporate beast against the idea of freedom of speech. It was a PR disaster.
کمی بعد از این قضیه ضربه دیگری وارد شد. کمپینی برای رفتار اخلاقی با حیوانات به اسم پیتا، روش‌هایی که برای کشتار مرغ‌ها استفاده می‌شد رو آشکار می‌کنه. و حدس بزنید کی سرپرست ارشد پیتا بود؟ بن ویلیامسون. درسته، همون کسی که در 7 سالگی کمک کرد تا مکدونالد یکی از رستوران‌هاش رو در لندن افتتاح کنه.
PETA's McCruelty campaign began in 1999 in earnest to try to inform the public about the rampant abuse of animals in the fast food industry. And it spawned hundreds of protests outside McDonald's restaurants around the world.
کمپین به شدت اوج میگیره و در نهایت مکدونالد قول میده تا استانداردهای بالاتری را برای مرغ‌ها در نظر بگیره. اما این برای بن کافی نیست.
McDonald's have said that they're only going to bring these in by 2024, which is at the moment 6 years away, and it will only apply to 70% of their chicken suppliers. And they still carry on slaughtering millions of birds in horrific ways.
در سال 2004 تبلیغات منفی بیشتری علیه مکدونالد پخش میشه. این دفعه هالیوود وارد معرکه میشه.
The supersized documentary in which I not only appeared, but I helped inspire it, for the first time, I think, dramatically showed just how dangerous fast food was. Because the guy in it, Morgan Spurlock, ate nothing but McDonald's food for 30 days. And his cholesterol, his blood pressure, many of the other medical indicators went off the roof. His doctors were begging him to quit.
این فیلم به طور فوق‌العاده فروش میره. فیلمی که با بودجه کمی ساخته شد بیش از 20 میلیون دلار سود میکنه و نظرات درباره فست فود رو در آمریکا و بریتانیا تغییر میده.
The thing that most appealed to the British public, the thing that propelled it into this machine of growth, the idea of quick, cheap, family food, is also the thing that opens it up to the charge of being responsible for the obesity epidemic in this country.
It's much worse in the United States than it is so far in most of Europe. And so if you're in Europe and you want to see what you're likely to look like in 10 years, look across the Atlantic.
I love Big Macs.
From a PR point of view, Supersize Me was a turning point for McDonald's. It made influencers at the time think that if we were going to sustain our life just purely at McDonald's, look at the disaster to our health. And that caught fire. And that was incredibly difficult to contain, because if you're going to consume McDonald's over a period of time on that scale, you're going to die. That's not good for a brand.
مکدونالد ادعا کرد که این فیلم هیچ تأثیری نداشته، اما به طور عجیبی وضعیت شروع به تغییر کرد.
McDonald's banned supersizing only because they were embarrassed because of the movie. And that is only the beginning of what they should be doing.
یک سال بعد از انتشار اون فیلم، مکدونالد سالاد رو به منوش اضافه کرد. حالا در منوی پر از برگرشون سبزیجات، سموتی، میوه و اولین جایگزین گوشت یعنی ماهی رو نیز دارن.
The fillet of fish.
Oh, wow.
فیلت و فیش در سال 1962 توسط لو گرین که نمایندهشون در اوهایو بود ابداع شد.
Is made with wild-caught Alaskan pollock.
این ساندویچ اولین آیتم غیر همبرگری بود که توسط ری کراک عرضه میشد.
It's kind of dry.
این برای افزایش فروش در مناطق کاتولیک درست شده، جایی که مشتری‌ها جمعه از خوردن گوشت پرهیز میکنن.
This was a staple of my Lent experience.
Growing up as a Catholic boy?
Oh, yeah, dude. This was always something that I had on Fridays during Lent.
ترکیباتش یک فیله ماهی سرخ شده در نون،
Looks flaky. It looks like it could be fish.
نون استیمبان،
It is a fluffy bun.
سس تارتار
McDonald's made me like tartar sauce. That's an impressive feat.
و پنیر آمریکایی.
Fish with cheese. That's odd, right?
Where does this fall in your rank of things, though, on the menu? Like, do you still go beef sandwiches?
Oh, yeah, this is still dead last.
Yeah.
با اون همه تبلیغات منفی علیه برگرها، بعضیا گفتن فیله جایگزین بهتریه. آیا درست میگن؟
I ask my law students, who are about the brightest in this country, to look at 3 different items, and I ask them to choose which is healthiest. Filet of fish, which people think is kind of healthy, or chicken McNuggets, or a greasy bacon cheeseburger. Which is the healthiest? Almost always, my bright students say fish. Chicken McNuggets, usually in the middle. But a greasy hamburger with cheese on it, oh, that's not healthy at all. And then I project up on the board exactly what's in it. If you look at the fish, 470 calories, 26 grams of fat. You look at the cheeseburger, it's got 14 grams of fat, about half what you get in the fish. Here's the problem. McDonald's knows that most people think this way. Fish healthy, cheeseburgers very unhealthy.
در اوایل قرن 20 مشکلات مکدونالد همچنان داره بیشتر میشه. بازاریابی اون برای بچه‌ها هم مورد انتقاد جدی قرار میگیره. هم رونالد مکدونالد و هم هپی میلز در دسته اخراجی‌ها قرار گرفتن.
McDonald's give away toys with their Happy Meals, but they denied this was to encourage children to keep coming back.
The main reason on why they focus on children is they will bring the parents in. And so the parents will come in and order food in addition to the children. So consequently, it's a double win for them.
Obviously, one of the things that McDonald's have been most successful at is targeting children, using a clown in order to appeal to a kid's imagination, advertising that clown to them at tea time. The sort of evil, clowny Pied Piper leading children on a merry dance into McDonald's, where they can enjoy a Happy Meal.
Kids love clowns, and when you're 5 and 6 and 7 and 8, you can't distinguish between a commercial and a non-commercial, and here's this nice clown telling you, go eat all this food.
اما تبلیغات فست فود چقدر موثره؟ آیا به انتخاب غذای بچه‌ها یا چاق دوران کودکی مرتبطه؟ دانشمندان در اینجا تلاش میکنن این رو بفهمن.
I have to choose a food, so if I choose that, my star goes that color.
When I started doing work with brain imaging, we were interested in looking at obese children and healthy weight children, in how they respond to appetizing pictures of food. Across the board, no matter the weight status of the child, healthy weight or obese, we saw lots of activity in reward regions of the brain. The differences that we found were actually related to self-control. There were significant differences between the healthy weight kids and the obese kids in that region of the brain. I think it raises some important questions. Is that okay to advertise, to market unhealthy foods to kids who may have something that may predispose them to go on to make, more unhealthy choices? It led us into another study where we actually had children watching advertisements while they were having a brain scan and then making food choices. Decision time was significantly less after they watched fast food commercials. The choices that they were making became more focused on taste and less focused on healthiness. Fast food advertising, fast food commercials make an impact. They change kids' behavior.
50 سال پس از اولین بیگ مک، آیا مکدونالد میتونه از این همه انتقاد و حساسیت جون سالم به در ببره؟ و در حالی که رقبای جدید سر و کله‌شون پیدا میشه، شانس نجاتش چقدره؟ در سال 2018 مکدونالد هنوز زنده است و در بریتانیا داره به کارش ادامه میده. علیرغم ربع قرن اعتراض و هجمای رسانه‌ای، هنوز بزرگترین فست‌فود زنجیره‌ای دنیاست. اما چطوری؟
What McDonald's did was to listen, and they knew radically they had to change the brand or they would die very quickly.
McDonald's response to that was to say, oh goodness, we better put loads of salads on the menu. We better create a McCafe concept of what we do. We better make sure we move significantly to health food.
And what McDonald's did, which is quite extraordinarily clever, is they took that stick that they were being beaten with and they turned it into a standard-bearing flag. So they said, we don't use cage birds. Our meat is 100% British. Our salads are good for you. And it was a very, very clever move.
The world's most famous menu. Tomorrow there are changes, billed as more important than any in the chain's UK history. Salads, yogurts, grilled chicken sandwiches. There's also corn and whole fruit. Healthier options here bolster McDonald's argument that tackling obesity is all about offering food choices and then letting individuals take responsibility. But be under no illusions, high-fat burgers remain at the centre of this business and advertising aimed at children will continue.
در سالهای اخیر بازار شلوغ فست فود آسیب‌هایی دید، اما اوضاع مکدونالد همچنان داره بهتر میشه. در بزرگترین بازارش آمریکا آمار فروشش 2.9% افزایش رشد نشون میده، در حالی که خیلی‌ها در بازار رستوران کاهش فروش رو گزارش دادن. با این حال باید حفاظاشون رو محکم‌تر کنن، چون یک سری تهدیدات جدیدی در خورد فروشی‌ها داره ظاهر میشه و آخریش رستوران‌هایی است که ادعا می‌کنن فست فودشون سالم‌تره.
Leon is very much based on McDonald's. There was a sense that we could take the best bits of McDonald's, which were, okay, it's going to be in the middle of the high street, located where you'd expect McDonald's. It's going to have the same format, it's going to have pretty much the same kitchen process, but everything that comes through that kitchen is going to be based on food that tastes good and does you good.
در آمریکا 80% مشتری‌ها میگن منوی با گزینه‌های سالم‌تر باعث میشه اون رستوران رو ترجیح بدن.
I suppose one of the great phenomenons now is a genuine search for healthy alternatives, and it's becoming mainstream. You look at the number of sort of salad bars there are opening up, healthy options, genuine healthy options opening up in every train station across the country. And I think it is a real, genuine threat to McDonald's.
In terms of which customer that we're competing for the same customer as McDonald's, to some degree, we are catering for people that had largely decided that they didn't want fast food anymore. So the people that had decided, you know what, it's making me feel too sick, making me feel, not so good, I don't want to eat in a fast food chain anymore. But I love the idea of fast food.
در بریتانیا مکدونالد حالا با رقابتی در حیطه اختصاصی خودش یعنی بازار همبرگر مواجه شده. رقبای سطح بالاتر سعی می‌کنن ضربه بزرگتری بهش بزنن. از 5 سال پیش که فایو گایز شروع به کار کرد تا حالا بیش از 80 رستوران ساخته.
It's strangely ironic that the biggest threat to McDonald's, the biggest competition, is against their main product, which is burgers. Five Guys, Honest Burger, all these brands of upmarket burger chains trying to compete.
ولی مکدونالد داره به آینده فکر میکنه ورای همبرگر معمولی. کی به فکرش خطوری میکرد یک بیگ مک بدون گوشت؟
That's one thing that McDonald's is doing that is good. McDonald's is right now trialing the McVegan burger in Scandinavia, so in Finland and Sweden. And early results suggest that it's a huge hit.
So if McDonald's really wants to be clever, it needs to be where the great innovation is, and that's in new protein. If they can invest in lab-grown meat, they will have an extraordinary future.
At this lab in the Netherlands, they can grow meat that's never been near any animal.
This is the cultured burger from stem cells from a cow.
با وجود رقبای بیشتر و سبک غذایی که همیشه در حال تغییره، مکدونالد داره اقدامات جالب و سختی انجام میده تا درجه 1 باقی بمونه. اما آیا آماده این چالش هست؟
McDonald's is going to continue to innovate and continue to change, and they're going to continually face competition, and they're going to do the best that they possibly can to meet that competition. And that's what the company has done extremely well at for 70 years, and that's what they're going to continue to do very well with.
I think McDonald's will survive into the future. I don't think they will stay the way they are.
در واقع اون تغییرات در حال حاضر دارن اتفاق میفتن. آیتم‌های جدیدی در منو ایجاد شده و طراحی داخل رستوران‌ها نیز جدید شده. در بعضی مناطق حتی بیگ مک رو تو در خونه‌تون میارن.
One of the qualities that McDonald's has in terms of from a corporate level is almost chameleon-like recoloring itself to adapt to the new market. So perhaps we're going to have to see vegan McDonald's opening up. Perhaps we're going to have to see some McDonald's becoming super uber premium. Perhaps we've got to see in some areas McDonald's becoming incredibly cheap, going massively down market.
As we say in PR and marketing, you can't be half pregnant. It's impossible. You have to absolutely move to one side of the room. You can't be in the middle. McDonald's will be thinking about a 10 or 20-year plan. And they were thinking of how they're going to exist.
برای 1.5 میلیون کارمند و 69 میلیون مردمی که هر روز از بیگ مک، فیلتو فیش یا پاکت فرایز لذت میبرن، تصور دنیای بدون مکدونالد سخته. اما آیا بیگ مک بعد از درجه 1 بودن برای مدت خیلی طولانی همچنان زنده میمونه تا 100مین سالگرد تولدش رو جشن بگیره؟
That's the job of big corporations, is to adapt and survive. What's so interesting about the McDonald's story, whether you love it or hate it or eat it or would never go eat it at all, is that, it's the arc of the 20th century.
ما با مکدونالد درباره ادعایی که پیتا مطرح کرده تماس گرفتیم و اینکه رونالد مکدونالد به عنوان ابزاری برای ترغیب بچه‌ها به سوی غذای مضر به کار گرفته شده. اونا بهمون گفتن ما متعهد هستیم که دائما برای غذاهای خود منابعی پیدا کنیم که شامل رفاه حیوانات در زنجیره تامین جهانی ما نیز می‌شود. هدف ما پیشرفت دائمی در جهت سلامت و رفاه مرغ‌ها میباشد. ما اخیراً نتیجه شورای جهانی پایداری مرغ‌ها را منتشر کردیم که خط مشی‌های گوناگون و کارشناسانه و توصیه‌هایی را در جهت بهبود رفاه و استراتژی پایداری مرغ‌ها ارائه می‌دهد. رونالد مکدونالد سال‌هاست در تبلیغات تلویزیونی فعالیت نکرده است. تمام بسته‌های هپی میل که بین بچه‌ها تبلیغ می‌شوند، همه الزامات قانونی تبلیغات محلی یا منطقه‌ای در حوزه بازاریابی کودکان را همچنان رعایت خواهند کرد.